All right, step one to Kugelis is frying the onions. I usually use about one large one or two small ones, chopped up small, and you just fry it up in butter. All right, the next step is a family secret. And what you do is you add evaporated milk. I usually use about 5 ounces, half a cup to 5 ounces, and you put it in with the onions. So after the onions are cooked, you put the onions in the bowl, you add the milk, and what that does is it gets the onion flavor really seeped into the milk, so it gets really evenly distributed within the Kugelis. The next step is to get the bowls ready, and what you have to do is melt some butter. It's the easiest way to do it, and just brush it along the edges of the casserole dishes. I use 2 medium-sized casserole dishes for 6 pounds of potatoes. The next thing I typically do is fry up the bacon, and you've got to cut it up into small strips. I find that the easiest way to do this is to put it in the freezer for about an hour before you cut it up. Makes it a lot easier to cut with a knife. You can also use scissors. So now that the bacon is cut, we can put it in the frying pan. I cut it into strips like that. Put it in a deep frying pan because otherwise it'll make quite a mess. You're cooking a pound of bacon all at once. And fry it till it's crispy and brown. All right, now the fun part. We've got to peel. I usually use about 6 pounds of potatoes. You can use 5. 6 fills usually 2 casserole dishes. And as you peel them, put them in a vat of cold water so they don't start turning brown. One other family secret, thanks to my Aunt Nina, is to use Yukon Gold potatoes. Everybody has different opinions, but we like the way they taste and the consistency they have once they're ground up and baked. So Yukon Gold is my preferred choice. If you can't get them, get a golden or a yellow potato. It's a good time now to get the oven preheated, if you haven't done so already. We usually start at around 425 and then adjust later. All right, next we're gonna take 5 eggs and just gonna whisk them up, have them ready to go. Once we get everything poured into the big bowl, we're gonna add the eggs, the bacon, and then the onions with the milk. All right, now comes the timing step, right? It's the grinding of the potatoes. My aunt used to grind them by hand, which seems very difficult and very tough to keep the color of the potatoes right. So once they grind up, if you let them sit too long, they'll start turning brown and gray. So I use an automated grater. You can probably use a food processor. What you want to do is grind it to a very, very fine mush. You're not making hash browns here. You're making Kugelis. So you want it to be very, very fine. So use the finest blade on your grinder, or you can mail order one of these from Lithuania to do the grinding for you. One other ingredient, which I sometimes forget and have to put on afterwards, but is salt. You want at least a teaspoon of salt in the mix. I usually use about a teaspoon and a half. And get ready to mix that in with the Kugelis when everything is put together. So I got everything ready here. I got my onions soaking in my condensed milk. I got my salt. I got the bacon and the bacon grease. That's going in too. We've got our greased pans. We've got our eggs. And now it's time to start grinding. Okay, now is where it all comes together. I'm going to put our eggs in there. Going to put the onions in there with the condensed milk. Really important. I'm going to put the bacon in. I'm going to have to pause and let's get the salt. Let's not forget the salt. And then I'm going to add the bacon and the bacon grease. And you can see how it looks. And then what you want to do is mix everything up. And then I use a soup ladle to take it out and put it into the pans. And here's what it looks like all mixed up. We're going to put it into the pans. You don't want to fill these all the way up because it is going to rise a bit. And you don't want it to be too thick. But again, that's personal preference. Like I said, I find that these two size casserole dishes do a pretty good job. And again, here's what it's looked like right before we put it in the oven. You'll see I did pretty good. I moved quick. No browning of the potatoes, which I really like. There is one secret that some people use. If your solution or your grind starts to brown, you can add a little ground up vitamin C, and then it'll turn it white again. I move quick enough so I don't have to do that. And into the oven we go. I usually start at 400 or 425. It needs to cook for about an hour, and you need to kind of keep an eye on it. Some people use the toothpick test to see if it's done. Typically, if the top starts turning very brown, and I'll show you the color, you know that it's ready. We'll come back in an hour. And here are the finished product after about an hour in the oven. They look to be cooked all the way through. Nice brown on the top. And I think they're ready to go. We just let them cool off a bit and cut them into squares and serve it with sour cream.